West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I want to bring in Tim Parlatore, a former member of the former president's legal team and the founder of Parlatore Law Group. Mr. Parlatore, I appreciate you joining us. The special counsel pointed out in his filing today that only two of the lawyers who have appeared on behalf of former President Trump and Walt Nauta have submitted the forms required for obtaining security clearance to deal with the classified documents at the center of the case. Are they just trying to run out the clock, or is that reasonable that only two would have actually applied for it so far, or is that an attempt to delay the trial?
Well, what we're talking about there is a electronic submission of an SF-86. I've done them before. It is a very long thing where you really have to give all of your addresses, all of your prior work experience, and basically anything that the government may want to look into to see if you have the requisite character to access classified documents. It can take a little while. I mean, it's taken me a week to fill it out, but I don't think that is necessarily, the only short pole in the tent. What I was kind of surprised at with these motions is that they telegraphed right from the beginning that they want to push this out indefinitely. That to me was odd.
Why?
So,
I mean, it is kind of surprising because essentially they're saying it's not just, we want this date, it's we don't even want you to decide when there should be a date.
Right. See, in federal criminal cases, the judge will set a date, and everybody knows that it's a fake date because they have to set the date based on the 70-day clock, and then the parties can consent to pushing it out. But also that clock stops for any number of reasons. Anytime you file a motion, that stops the clock. So, to at this stage kind of ask for the judge to, hey, just throw away the clock is weird because a federal case of this magnitude will take a couple of years generally, even if it's not Donald Trump, even if it's not a politically sensitive case. It'll take a couple of years, but it will get pushed out in increments. You'll push it out, 2 years in 3-month increments, throughout multiple different scheduling orders. And then every time you file a motion, here they're going to file undoubtedly a motion to dismiss. That's going to stop the clock while that's all being litigated. They're going to file a motion to controvert the search warrant. That will stop the clock again. And then once you start to get into, late next year, then they can start talking about their schedule. But the thing is, all of the grounds that they're talking about with it takes longer because of classified documents, a judge prefers to see that after you actually have some track record. Instead of saying, we think it's going to take a long time, if you wait a few months and say, hey, judge, this thing is taking a long time, this is why we need more time, that's where the judge has a much easier way of saying, yes, I agree, let's push it out.
On the idea, though, that only two of the attorneys have applied for security clearances for these documents, I mean, I would think this is probably a pretty big case for most of the attorneys working on this thing. So, I mean, if they wanted to move along quickly, I would think they would jump on those security clearances pretty fast, no? I mean, it seems like
Oh, sure.
If you're trying to slow walk something, trying to slow walk it at every step of the way is the way to go about it.
Well, the government has to initiate those by giving them a link. Not anybody can just log in and create an account for themselves. So one question I have is how many of these, what they call the EQIP SF-86 applications has the government even sent out?
Right. But the fact that Jack Smith is complaining about it, the fact that Jack Smith is complaining about it in court documents would seem to indicate that they had probably sent out those links, if he's saying only 2 people responded.
You would think, but they would say, maybe that they sent out links to several different associates, only 2 of them responded. It's unclear whether they may have only sent it out to, Mr. Blanch and Mr. Keiss, and they were the only ones who have responded. I don't know.
I was talking to Chris Christie last night, who's obviously an opponent of the former president. He's also a former U.S. attorney. He was saying that between now and December could be enough time for everyone to prepare for the trial. Do you agree with that? And if not, what is unreasonable about a December timeline?
I think it's unreasonable based on the specific issues involved in this case because there is going to be significant pretrial motion practice. Undoubtedly, they're going to be filing motions related to discovery, related to dismissal, related to the search warrant. And, I have tried federal cases very, very quickly where December would, very easily be a good timeline. But those are cases where there were no search warrants and there were no other issues where we essentially just waived motions entirely and said, let's go straight to a jury trial. So I don't really see that being as viable in this particular case based on the facts that are in it.
I want some of the other folks on the panel I know have some questions. Ellie?
Yeah, so I too have done SF-86s throughout, or did them throughout my government career, and I agree with your point. They are voluminous, and you've got to pull every piece of information. But my question for you, as someone who's represented the former president, and you didn't quite answer this with Anderson, do you think this is just a deliberate delay tactic? It certainly should be a priority for an attorney to get briefed up and get ready and fill out their background checks in order to be able to zealously represent their client. And I guess just it's really a sincere question. Do you think they really might just be trying to delay this and push this out rather than, it's a hard document to fill out and it takes time? I mean, I just don't think that's that convincing if that's the argument they're making.
I think that the bigger indicator is the fact that they filed a motion asking for the trial to be just continued without any date whatsoever. That's the bigger indicator.
That's the red flag for you.
What the strategy is. Yeah.
Alyssa?
Yeah. And I mean, the truth is, if the two attorneys who filled it out are the 2 that are actually going to be reviewing those documents, then that's fine. I mean, back with the old team, Jim Trusty and I, we both have security clearances, and the amount of classified documents we're talking about here are not so voluminous that you have to have a huge team of associates, 10 different people to look at them. Having 2 people look at them, I don't see the SF-86 issue as being the primary indicator of delay.
Yeah, I think what I'd say, though, it's the kind of thing for which you don't really have a ton of recourse, either if you're the government or if you're the court. If they're just dragging their feet on basic things like filing their documents, those are the little things that an attorney can do to try to gum up or slow down a proceeding. And it seems, there's just speculation, it seems that that's the kind of thing that we'd see much more of over the course of this proceeding.
Yeah. One thing to watch for, certainly. Alyssa?
Well, I mean, a judge can certainly impose a deadline on it. Yeah. A judge can say you got to get this thing done by Friday.
And Tim,
I've seen that done.
As you would know, and Elliot and myself, is the government can also expedite security clearances. So if the attorneys were willing to fill out the SF-86 process pretty quickly, I mean, the FBI oversees a large part of that, of course, the Department of Justice. But kind of to the point earlier, do you think that there is an argument to be made that there's kind of a vital public interest in getting this on the road by December, by the end of the year, so it could be adjudicated ahead of the election? You could look at it both ways on that. Ultimately, the constitutional right to a speedy trial is a right that belongs to the defendant, not to the government. The defendant shall have a right to a speedy trial. And, one thing that I noticed in the government's filings was that they said that they've already turned over in that first group of discovery
all of the 3500 material, which is the witness interviews and the grand jury transcripts, which is something that's very unusual. Usually the government tries to hide that until the very last minute. They won't let you see it before motions. You get it really just a couple of days before jury selection. So the fact that they turned that over, within the first batch, which is a radical departure from how the U.S. Attorney's offices usually handle that, that is certainly an indicator to the defense that Jack Smith is trying to rush this to trial as quickly as possible by kind of removing any discovery issues like that. So I can see, from that indicator, that Jack Smith is certainly trying to push this forward.
Yeah. Caitlin?
But, ultimately, is it in the public's best interest? When you have a politically sensitive case like this, it goes both ways.
Well, I think some would argue, Tim.
It depends on what the verdict is, I guess.
I think some would argue that voters should know that before they go and cast their ballots. I think if you were looking at this, though, and their complaints were just about one thing, whether it's the time to get the security clearances or asking for this indefinite trial date, but they're also making this argument, Trump's team is, that they can't get a fair jury before the 2024 election. I mean, do you really believe that?
I don't think that this motion is the best time to raise that. That's something that they would really have to get a lot more evidence of to properly brief under the appropriate rules. And as you guys said earlier, this is Donald Trump, whether he's a candidate or a post-candidate. It is a very difficult, divisive subject. And so I think that they are going to have massive difficulties picking a jury in this. They should, get a pool that's much larger than normal, and they're going to lose most of them right off the bat. But I think that's kind of premature to be raising at this stage. It's a little bit too premature.
We should also point out that's one of the things that Jack Smith said in documents today, essentially that, yes, there will be, special handling, different sort of procedures, but that the courts are well equipped to do this, even if it does require a little bit of extra work.
It is Friday, the 14th of July of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, indeed. Yes, some might say this is a liquid diet day, but we'll have a few morsels of sustenance to carry us through. Do not worry. Nope. Well, it's going to be a scorcher out here in the West, at least here in the Southern Oregon West. I don't know if we're in the actual heat dome, but there is a heat advisory for our little town, specifically mentioned in the weather report by the bigwigs, not just the Weather Underground. Oh. So we got that to look forward to. But we've figured out a way of surviving. Unfortunately, if the nights are not cool, it sort of destroys that whole let's bring in the cool from the night, lock it into the house during the day, and then we won't have to run the air conditioner. Sometimes we don't have to run the air conditioner because of the cool nights. But when the nights are bumping 70, ooh, no. Doesn't work too well. You only get a little bit of cool, and it's only in relative terms, because I got to tell you, 80 feels cool when you're walking around in 105-degree weather. Mm-hmm. But that's what we're doing. So we may have to run the air conditioner today, or go somewhere that has air conditioning. The unfortunate part about that is that my mom woke up in a mood, and I fear it may linger throughout the day, and I suspect I know what's going on. So, poor lady. I forgot to mention I got a jury summons, and normally back in the day, whenever I would get a jury summons, I'd show up. And this is after, filling out all the questionnaire and saying what my background is and employment history, etc. And I'd show up there, and I don't know why, but maybe for their preemptive challenges, I'd be kicked off while in the big group. And it sort of seemed like it was because I had grad level education in American Lit. Oh no, he's too well read. We can't have him on the jury. But now it's more that, and I actually would like to serve because, being jury foreman, I could really be a poet, philosopher, king then. Maybe. Delusions of grandeur. Anyway, I consider it to be a civic duty, part of the democratic process of being part of your government, because you are the government. But I'm in a quandary. I can't leave my mom alone for that long during a day for, I guess, 10 days that I'd be expected to show up. 10 business days. I don't think they're counting the weekends. Oh, boy. But, so I guess I got to beg off on it. I got to tell the circuit judge I'm really the sole caregiver for my mom, my 86-year-old mom, who can't really be left alone, and I can't seem to get anybody to take care of her in that time, and would I want to? My sisters really can't do that. She's taking care of my brother-in-law, who has his own medical issues, so it's tough. Anyway, so much for civic duty in a time of stress. You got to take care of those that took care of you. And I don't know, I don't feel bad about it. But this is what we live in now, and we're taking care of elderly parents, and most of us are elderly ourselves. How dare you be a young parent? How dare you? Okay, so I got that off my chest. Anyway, I've never been able to serve on a jury. I've been called, but never been asked to serve. All right. Yeah. I did serve during Vietnam, though, just so people don't think that I've got any of that stolen valor thing going on. And I did. I served during the whole Vietnam War. I started off serving at Del Taco on Placentia Avenue in Placentia. Right there, pretty close to Yorba Linda Boulevard, not too far from it. And then I got transferred, promoted, so to speak, to the Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor in Tustin. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was actually before the freeway was completely built. You had to wend your way through the orange groves to get to Tustin. That was actually kind of fun, except it was awfully dark late at night when a high schooler has to come back, driving their car, and they're, late at night. Motorcyclist turning in front of you. Yeah, that happened to me, and I could have smacked him and, really hurt him. I don't know what he was thinking. I had my lights on. But I had this premonition that this guy was going to make a U-turn. He was going to act like he was turning right and then go left in front of me. He was going to pull a U-turn, and that's exactly what he did. And fortunately, I was slowing down dramatically. And when he kind of pulled in front of me, I was almost to a stop, so kind of knocked him over. Yeah, that could have been real scary. So I don't know. It was a premonition. I listened to my premonition, and I prepared for it, and I didn't fight it. And I don't believe in premonitions, but I got to say, it was really strong. And I decided, this guy's going to pull right in front of me. I better slow down. And I was just a kid. Unfortunately, there's other kids like that one, because he wasn't that terribly young. I don't think he may have still been in high school. I thought he might have been a little bit older, but everybody looked old to me back then. If you were a senior and I was a sophomore, you were ancient. Remember those days? Jeez. Anyway, 16-year-old kid. Could have gone the other way. I could have been the kid on the motorcycle. Except, I got to tell you, I would never have, at least made a U-turn like that without checking my side mirror. Maybe he never had one. I didn't think about that. But, yeah, could have ended up badly for him. And what would I have? Oh, the terrible psychological dissonance of knowing that I was the one that caused... No, I didn't cause it, but I'd be part of it, so I would feel bad. That's not as bad of a predicament as somebody who smashed their head on the pavement at speed. You didn't it's not nice. Okay, so either or. I don't think there's any either or in that. So fortunately, we all survived it, and now, unfortunately, we have to concern ourselves with our kids going to a classroom and wondering if somebody who can carry their armory around, strapped to them and strapped to their legs, strapped across their shoulders, in a vest, in a tactical vest. Walking. I don't know. Do they talk? But they're an armory. It's a mobile armory. Go right in the school, shoot it up. No problem. We can't take guns away from people because it's their constitutional right. We can't blame the whole thing on the actions of a few, except when they want to take out whole sections of populations, whatever they are, that they've defined as other. Yeah, the bigotry on display is, I don't know, I'm a little worried. Do they know something that we don't? Is there a cataclysmic event wending our way through the great expanse of space, and we're going to get smacked by it? And so if we're going to go the way of the dinosaurs, might as well get in our kicks now, and we just have a sizable block of people whose idea of kicks is to be racist bigots? I don't know. I'm a little afraid. I think there's an asteroid headed our way, and they're not letting us know. Oh, yeah, they're letting us know in little tidbits. Oh, we have some evidence of UFOs, and we're going to... Yeah. I remember the UFO scare back in the 80s, and it turned out to be the B-1 bomber like we all said it was. Some sort of fixed-wing aircraft that the military was developing, because we used to see it fly through the Cascades pretty low right there through Wolf Creek and Wolf Pass up there near Blue River. And I'd spend a lot more time on the ranch when my mom and Tom were there. So, now they're letting us know about some sort of UFOs. Oh, you mean like rocky material that might be smacking into us? What I hate is, like before, the life forms that tended to survive were like rats. So, I hate the idea that the only members of our great population and civilization that are going to survive this cataclysmic event are the rats among us. Ugh. Okay, but they survive. Maybe we'll have enough of our DNA material to pass on the good traits, let's hope. Okay, enough of those metaphysics. Is that metaphysics? What do we have in store for you here on this Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? No, we have not been dipping into the French 77s, not yet. This is all wholly organic, not brought on by any substances. Not any. Anyway, what do we have in store for you here as we begin in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Alabama Democrats expressed frustration over Republican secrecy in sharing proposals to the Supreme Court redistricting order. That's how they work. Arizona Democrats filed a complaint against No Labels over donor secrecy. Yeah, No Labels is a cookbook. Stay away from them. And Houston plans to spend millions of dollars to relocate residents from neighborhoods located near a rail yard polluted by a cancer-linked wood preservative. And I have a terrible idea. I know which one that is. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Russian lawmakers moved to further restrict transgender rights in new legislation, and they didn't get the idea from us. This is the Putin playbook, and our GOP is playing by it. And a prosecutor in Argentina has launched an investigation into crimes against humanity in Venezuela following a criminal complaint filed by the Clooney Foundation for Justice. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who I should once again mention, she and Ricky are both at Netroots Nation 23 in Chicago with tornadoes, a tornado wing in the vicinities too. Oh my God, did you see what happened at O'Hare? My God. Anyway, and I think Ricky had to fly into O'Hare. Hoo-wee. So they are at Netroots Nation 23, and we look forward to dispatches from the front of, I don't know, the front desk, right there where they put everybody in. Here, take your press pass. Do we still get press passes? Are they giving those out anymore? We'll see. Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Kelly, for everything that you guys do. Now, if you out there in radio listening land would look across the page, I know it's radio, but, this is interactive type of, we got many platforms that we deal with, so there you go. Anyway, at our homepage, if you look to the left from that chat room link that's on the right, go to the left, down a skosh. There is the link for our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills and continue this powerhouse of existence that has been powerhousing for over a dozen years. And we have you to thank for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. All kidding aside, we do take it quite seriously, and we do thank you for your generosity, and we thank you, those of you who may consider in the future of, becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, because we need all the help we can get. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable also. I post the show notes and links diary 10 minutes before showtime, and you can always find the show notes and links diaries by going to my social media feed. If you don't already go to the actual Daily Coast page, I keep them there. So, I don't know why I say this, but I do anyway. So follow me on those, and we'll have fun. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please pick up podcasts by way of Spreakers, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Except for Stitcher. You can't do it on Stitcher anymore. Thank you, Sirius XM. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Kim Chandler out of the Associated Press. Majority Republican lawmakers have not released their ideas for redrawing Alabama's congressional districts to comply with a Supreme Court ruling, leading Democrats on Thursday yesterday to accuse GOP lawmakers of shutting them and the public out of the process ahead of next week's special session on redistricting. Alabama lawmakers begin the special session on Monday to approve a plan that is being developed by Republicans but hasn't been presented. Okay. There has not been any public scrutiny on it, and we're just going to be handed that map at some point over the weekend, maybe even Monday, and say, here, vote on it. Representative Chris England, a Democrat from Tuscaloosa, said, I think he's a Democratic representative. Can we please correct that AP style manual, please? And old Chris England said that after a meeting with the legislature's redistricting committee. He said he understands that the GOP majority will determine what passes, but said that something with as much jeopardy attached to it as redrawing the congressional map to satisfy a Supreme Court decision should be done in the light of day. Well, I don't know. Maybe the GOP there is just following the Supreme Court's lead. They won't want anyone to know what they're doing. Well, at least the MAGA members of the court, because there's three that really want everyone to know. Let's be clear. Speaking of such a coincidence, a 3-judge panel gave Alabama until July 21st to adopt a new congressional map after the U.S. Supreme Court upheld its ruling that the state violated the Voting Rights Act with its current plan that has only one congressional district with a substantial number of black voters. The Alabama Permanent Legislative Committee on Reapportionment held a meeting yesterday, Thursday, to hear public comments and approve guidelines. House Speaker Pro Temp Chris Pringle, who serves as co-chairman of the committee, said it will meet on Monday to vote on the proposed map. While Democrats accuse Republicans of keeping the process shrouded in secrecy, Pringle said they are proceeding as quickly as possible. He said the proposed map will be sent to committee members as soon as possible before the Monday meeting. Like 20 minutes before? 10? Alabama now has only one majority black district out of 7 in a state where more than 1 in 4 residents are black. The 3-judge panel said in its 2022 ruling that Alabama should have 2 districts in which black voters either comprise a voting age majority or something close to it. Republicans have the numbers to approve a plan without support from Democratic lawmakers. However, the plan must go back before the 3-judge panel. GOP lawmakers risk the court stepping in and drawing its own plan if lawmakers stray too far from the court's wishes. Jay Cooper of the AP brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Arizona Democratic Party is looking to force new political party no labels to disclose its donors or lose its status as a political party, an escalation of Democrats' efforts to block a group they worry will boost Trump's chances of returning to the White House. Arizona Democrats filed a complaint yesterday, Thursday, with Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, a Democrat who angered some in his party earlier this year when he formally recognized No Labels as a political party in the state. The complaint asks Fontes to suspend the nascent party until it discloses its donors. No Labels says it is seeking ballot access in many states and will run a bipartisan unity ticket for president if the two parties select unreasonably divisive presidential nominees. The party also secured ballot access in Alaska, Colorado, and Oregon. The group plans to release an agenda for a potential 2024 presidential ticket next week in New Hampshire, with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and former Utah Governor John Huntsman, a Republican. The duo, who both carved out centrist positions within their parties, is a potential White House ticket for the party. Centrist? Joe Manchin? Centrist? The Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Houston plans to spend millions of dollars to relocate residents from neighborhoods located near a rail yard polluted by a cancer-linked wood preservative that has been blamed for an increase in cancer cases, the city's mayor announced yesterday, Thursday. Texas health officials in 2019 identified a cancer cluster in Houston's historically black Fifth Ward and Kashmir Gardens neighborhoods. A second cluster was identified in 2021. Health officials have found higher rates of respiratory cancers as well as childhood cancers, including acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Residents and local officials have long blamed the high number of cancer cases on contamination from a Union Pacific rail yard near both neighborhoods. Creosote, which has been associated with an increased risk of contracting cancer, was used for more than 80 years at the site until the 1980s. City officials say the contamination has reached the groundwater in the neighborhoods. In September of 2022, the Houston Health Department announced that testing of surface soil samples from around the Union Pacific Rail Yard found dioxin, a highly toxic chemical compound associated with cancer and other health risks. Residents of the neighborhood say they have long felt their concerns for their health and safety have been ignored by the railroad company and by local officials. No timetable was given for when the relocation process could be completed. The mayor said the relocation effort will extend beyond his administration as his final term as mayor concludes at the end of December. Well, we'll see, won't we? All right, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Not Dialed Back. Plans for a fifth Indiana Jones movie go back to the 70s, when 4 sequels were negotiated after Raiders. With passing time and corporate changes, this one, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, is the first not conceived by Lucas or directed by Spielberg. Instead, directorial duties have fallen to James Mangold of Logan and Ford vs. Ferrari fame, and he and his 9-figure budget have done a good job wrapping the franchise. For villains, we're back to Nazis. This one opens in 1944 with Harrison Ford's character on a train full of Nazi loot, where we're introduced to an archaeological object said to facilitate time travel. More accurately, it's half the object. Fast forward 25 years and we find the combatants from the train, Indy, now a Columbia professor, and the Nazi officer, now working for NASA, globetrotting to find the other half. The quote-unquote former Nazi has some corrections in mind for the timeline vis-a-vis World War II. As expected, familiar characters appear, though the film doesn't seem weighed down by subplots to accommodate such appearances. New cast members include a dazzling Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Indy's goddaughter and actual daughter of Indy's colleague from the opening scene. Her character is that of an antiquities dealer of dubious ethics, but who's always on the right side when it counts, and Mads Mikkelsen, bringing off the Nazi Jürgen Voller with evil aplomb. Is Indiana Jones the Dial of Destiny an unintentional metaphor for recapturing past thrills? Maybe. Once again, we get chases, walks through caves, and we even see the whip in one scene, though it feels a bit forced. Even if it is that metaphor, though, it's a must-see for generations of fans. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest old, 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There's several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Can colleges have affirmative action admissions programs for rich white people? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. A recent Supreme Court decision involving Harvard and the University of North Carolina struck down affirmative action, consideration of diversity as a factor in college admission decisions. Justice Gorsuch, part of the 6-3 majority, in his additional concurring opinion said that legacy admissions, applicants with relatives who are donors and alums, quote, undoubtedly benefit white and wealthy applicants the most. Justice Sotomayor, in her dissent, agreed with that. At highly selective colleges, legacy admissions make up between 4 and 23% of the first-year class. Indeed, at Cornell, Dartmouth, Notre Dame, and USC, legacy students outnumber black students. And only a very few colleges, MIT, Johns Hopkins, and Amherst, for example, have eliminated legacy admissions. Experience shows that eliminating legacies will in fact increase racial diversity. And after the Supreme Court's decision, 3 civil rights groups filed a complaint at the Federal Department of Education against Harvard, claiming that legacy admissions violate federal statutory law by discriminating against black, Hispanic, and Asian applicants in favor of less qualified white ones. Until that complaint is finally decided, we won't know for sure whether affirmative action programs in college admissions may continue for rich people who are disproportionately white. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day that Woody Guthrie was born in Okemos, Oklahoma. Guthrie became one of the most prolific songwriters to ever sing the stories of the working class. His most well-known song is This Land Is Your Land, an anthem whose lyrics claim America for the common man. During the Great Depression, Guthrie traveled from Oklahoma to California with farmers driven off their land by the ravages of the Dust Bowl. He talked with them and learned their stories and songs. He spent the rest of his life singing the songs of those downtrodden. His guitar bore the message, "This machine kills fascists." Guthrie believed in the power of music. His songs serve as a lasting impression for many musicians, from his own son Arlo Guthrie to Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and many more. Even today, Guthrie's music asks powerful questions about how we as a nation treat workers. In his song Deportees, Guthrie tells the story of migrant Mexican farm workers. His lyrics explain, "We died in your hills, we died in your deserts, we died in your valleys and died in your plains. We died neath your trees, we died in your buses. Both sides of the river, we died just the same." He ends the song by asking, is this the best way we can grow our big orchards? Is this the best way we can grow our good fruit? Like so many of Guthrie's songs, these questions remain unanswered.
You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. Oh, they will call you the deportee.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 65 degrees Fahrenheit, currently under an active heat advisory that will last through the weekend, by the way. So that means we'll have highs in the low to mid 100s, and that would be 100 to 105, not 150. Soon they will be forecasting mid 100s will be 150 degrees Fahrenheit, but not now. Abundant sunshine throughout the day with winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies tonight, lows near 65, not nearly cool enough, I keep saying. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then sunny skies tomorrow on Saturday with near record high temperatures, highs around 105. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen remains the predominant pollen that is causing people grief right here in our little hamlet of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 20 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains very high at level 9, so take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.07 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 72%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. And that's the Weather Underground for you. That's what they do. London is 65 degrees with rain showers. Paris is 88 and sunny. Rome is 91 and sunny with a heat advisory that could impact critical infrastructure. Kyiv is 75 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 80 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 87 and fair. Tokyo is 82 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 48 and clear. San Francisco, California is 54 cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay for heavy fog. And New York is 77 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Dasha Litvinova of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Russian lawmakers yesterday, Thursday, approved a toughened version of a bill that outlaws gender transitioning procedures with added clauses that annul marriages in which one person has changed gender and bars transgender people from becoming foster or adoptive parents, soon to be taken up by a state legislature near you, by the way. The bill received swift, unanimous approval of Russia's lower house of parliament, the State Duma, in its key second reading, and lawmakers scheduled the third and final reading for today. There is little doubt that the bill, a crippling blow to Russia's oppressed LGBTQ+ community, will be adopted amid the Kremlin's crusade to protect what it views as the country's traditional values. The bill bans any medical interventions aimed at changing the sex of a person, as well as changing one's gender in official documents and public records. The new clauses added to the bill also amend Russia's family code by listing gender change as a reason to annul a marriage and adding those who had changed gender to a list of people who cannot become foster or adoptive parents. Lawmakers portray the measure as protecting Russia from the Western anti-family ideology, which, with some describing gender transitioning as pure Satanism. The crackdown on LGBTQ+ people started a decade ago when Putin first proclaimed a focus on traditional family values, a move ardently supported and fueled by the Russian Orthodox Church. In 2013, the Kremlin adopted the first legislation restricting LGBTQ+ rights, known as the Gay Propaganda Law, that banned any public endorsement of non-traditional sexual relations among minors. Only traditional ones. In 2020, Putin pushed through a constitutional reform that outlawed same-sex marriage. But authorities ramped up their rhetoric about protecting the country from what it called the West's degrading influence after sending troops into Ukraine last year in what rights advocates saw as an attempt to legitimize the war. Lawmakers moved last year to ban propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations among adults. The initiative was quickly rubber-stamped, and by December 2022, any positive or even neutral representation of LGBTQ+ people in movies, literature, or media was outlawed.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the Associated Press brings us this last amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. A prosecutor in Argentina has launched an investigation into crimes against humanity in Venezuela following a criminal complaint filed by the Clooney Foundation for Justice. Federal prosecutor Carlos Stornelli noted that the complaint pointed to the responsibility of several high-ranking members of the Venezuelan National Guard in human rights abuses during 2014 street protests against the government of Nicolas Maduro. The move by the foundation, set up by actor George Clooney and his wife, human rights lawyer Amal Clooney, marks the latest effort to use Argentina's legal system and the principle of universal jurisdiction to prosecute crimes against humanity committed elsewhere. The foundation chose Argentina to file this complaint because the country's justice system has already applied the principle of universal jurisdiction to investigate crimes against humanity committed in Spain and Myanmar. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Monday. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.